A 6-year-old steps onto the stage in Munich and changes music forever. In Paris and London, audiences pay a week's wages just to hear him. By 10, he has outplayed the city's masters and caught the attention of J.C. Bach. Was Mozart's genius truly different or just better publicized? How did a child from Salzburg make Europe question the limits of human creativity? This story isn't just about perfection, it's about obsession, immense pressure, and the cost of brilliance. To understand why his legacy still outshines even Beethoven and Bach, we have to go back to the first thunderstruck applause and ask, can anyone ever truly live up to the myth of musical perfection? 1756 records the birth of Johannes Chrysostomus Wolfgangus Theophilus Mozart, later known to history as Wolfgang Amadeus. The Mozart family lived at 9 Getreidegasse, a cramped apartment above a busy street in Salzburg. His father, Leopold, was already a respected violinist and composer, but nothing in the city's modest musical life hinted at what was coming. Leopold's ambitions for his son were clear from the start. By the age of 5, Wolfgang could play both clavier and violin, and was already writing tiny compositions in his father's careful hand. But the world's first real glimpse of the boy's talent came not in Salzburg, but in Munich, January 1762. Leopold's correspondence describes the journey: a winter departure by carriage, Wolfgang bundled in furs, his sister Nannerl beside him, manuscripts tucked into a battered trunk. The destination was the Electoral Court's Redoute, where the 6-year-old would play before Elector Max III Joseph and his court. No ticketed audience, no public fanfare, just the silent expectation of nobility and the weight of a father's hope. The programme included 2 violin sonatas, catalogued today as K6 and K7, and an improvised fantasia on the harpsichord. Leopold's letter notes the astonishment of the court, the elector's praise, and the promise of further invitations. But what did the boy himself feel? The records are silent on that point. Only the music survives, bright and assured, as if the child had always belonged in that gilded room. Within months, Munich was just the first step. Leopold's diary hints at plans for Vienna, then Paris, then London. Each new city would bring larger crowds, higher stakes, and more pressure. But the journey always began with a single, undeniable fact. In a small city on the edge of the Alps, a child was born who would make the world listen in disbelief. Paris, in the spring of 1764, was a city obsessed with novelty. Yet even there, the arrival of a 7-year-old prodigy from Salzburg caused a stir. The Salle des Menus Plaisirs, filled with aristocrats, foreign dignitaries, and fashionable Parisians, each paying 5 livres for the privilege of witnessing something they could hardly believe. On the programme was a violin sonata, a duet for 2 violins, and a harpsichord improvisation, all performed by a child. The Mercure de France wrote, "The court and the fashionable salons alike were entranced. The Duke of Orléans himself stood to applaud, while rumours spread through the salons that the boy could play any piece after hearing it once." But Paris was only the beginning. By the following winter, the Mozarts crossed the Channel to London, where the stakes were even higher. On February the 21st, 1765, the King's Theatre at Haymarket sold balcony tickets for 12 shillings, a sum that made the event accessible to London's elite, but also to the city's growing class of merchants and craftsmen. The crowd packed the hall, eager to see if the stories from the continent were true. Charles Burney, the English music historian, sat in the audience, notebook in hand. He recorded in his diary, "A packed house of gentlemen, ladies, and the curious craftsmen. The boy's dexterity is extraordinary." Wolfgang played symphonies K16 and K19, a violin concerto, and then, without warning, improvised an organ piece at St. Paul's Cathedral. The London Chronicle ran a glowing review, and soon the Prince of Wales himself invited the Mozarts to court. In private, Johann Christian Bach, the so-called London Bach, took the boy under his wing, inviting him to play duets and showing him the latest in musical fashion. This mentorship left a mark. Mozart's own letters mentioned Bach's influence, and later scholars would point to these months as a turning point in his style. Each new city brought higher expectations. The ticket prices rose, the halls grew larger, and the reviews more breathless. No longer confined to the rarefied world of courts, Mozart's reputation now belonged to the public, judged by critics, chronicled in newspapers, and measured in the hard currency of ticket sales. The applause in Paris and London was not just for a prodigy, it was for the idea that perfection could walk among ordinary men, dazzling and unexplainable. But with every ovation came a new question. How long could anyone, even Mozart, sustain such brilliance under the weight of so much expectation? He resigned from his post in Salzburg, leaving behind the security of court employment for the restless energy of Vienna. The letter of resignation, still preserved in the Salzburg State Archives, carries no hint of the gamble he was taking. Vienna was a city of opportunity, but also of competition, and Mozart arrived with little more than his reputation and a handful of manuscripts. The first months were uncertain. Mozart rented small rooms, taught students to pay the bills, and played for aristocrats who admired his skill, but hesitated to offer steady work. Yet, in the midst of this uncertainty, he found something he had never known before: independence. For the first time, he could choose his commissions, set his own schedule, and write the music he wanted to hear. The risks were real. No patron meant no safety net, but the freedom was intoxicating. On August 4, 1782, Mozart married Constanze Weber in a quiet ceremony at St. Jacob's Church. The marriage certificate, signed by both, is still held in Vienna's parish records. Constanze brought stability and warmth to his often chaotic life. She managed the household, copied music, soothed his anxieties, and, when money ran short, pawned her own jewellery to keep them afloat. Their partnership was not always easy, but it gave Mozart a sense of belonging that no court appointment ever had. During these early Viennese years, Mozart's creativity caught fire. In 1785, he completed the Piano Concerto No. 21 in C major, K467, a work whose autographed manuscript survives, its pages filled with confident, flowing script. The concerto's slow movements, serene and luminous, seemed to capture the optimism of his new life. Audiences responded with enthusiasm, and the Vienna press praised his unmatched clarity of invention. But even as applause filled the concert halls, financial worries never fully disappeared. Mozart's freelance existence meant every month was a new test. He juggled teaching, composing, and performing, always searching for the next commission. The stakes were personal as much as professional. Success in Vienna meant not just acclaim, but survival for himself and Constanze. The city's musical circles buzzed with talk of this young composer who wrote with such speed and brilliance. Yet beneath the surface, Mozart knew what it cost to keep producing at this pace. Each new concerto or sonata was a wager on his talent, his stamina, and the hope that Vienna would continue to listen. In the final years of his life, Mozart's creative output reached a level that left even his rivals in awe. When Don Giovanni, K527, premiered in Prague on October 29, 1787, the city's newspapers called it the opera of all operas. The overture's storm, the seductive arias, the comic terror of the Commendatore. Each moment seemed to stretch what opera could achieve. Even the critics who had doubted him in Vienna found themselves swept along. The score, now held in the Library of Congress, reveals a composer writing with absolute command, every voice and instrument woven into the drama. Just months later, in the summer of 1788, Mozart turned to the symphony. In the space of only 6 weeks, he composed 3 symphonies: Symphony No. 39 in E-flat, K543, Symphony No. 40 in G minor, K550, and Symphony No. 41 in C major, K551, Jupiter. The Jupiter's final movement, a 5-theme fugue, was something no composer had attempted at that scale. The autographed manuscript of K551, dated August 10, 1788, shows barely a correction. Scholars have pored over the pages, searching for signs of struggle, but the notes seem to pour out in a single, unbroken line. The Vienna press barely noticed the premieres, but later generations would call these works the summit of classical form. Mozart's ambition only grew. In January 1790, Così fan tutte, K588, debuted at the National Theatre. The plot, 2 young officers testing the fidelity of their fiancées, divided audiences. But the music was undeniable. The sextet at the end of Act 1, the shifting ensembles, the sudden turns from comedy to heartbreak. Mozart's score moved with a lightness and depth that left other composers scrambling to catch up. Beethoven, then a young man in Bonn, reportedly studied the score in awe, copying passages by hand. Then, in September 1791, as his health began to fail, Mozart completed the Magic Flute, K620. The opera's premiere at the Theatre auf der Wieden drew crowds from every corner of Vienna. Papageno's comic songs, the Queen of the Night's impossible arias, the solemn harmonies of the priests. Each scene seemed to contain a world. The score, finished barely days before the first performance, is a record of urgency and invention. The reviews spoke of a composer at the height of his powers, and the box office receipts confirmed it. The Magic Flute was an instant success. In these years, Mozart's music set new standards for what perfection could mean. Each work built on the last, pushing the limits of melody, structure, and expression. While Bach's fugues dazzled with their logic and Beethoven's symphonies thundered with raw emotion, Mozart's greatest works seemed to balance clarity and complexity with an ease that defied explanation. The question lingered: was this the sound of perfection, or was it something even deeper? Marks the autograph of Eine kleine Nachtmusik, K525. The handwriting is steady, the lines unbroken, and there are no signs of hesitation. Musicologists have examined this page under magnification, tracing the ink's density and the sweep of the pen. The evidence is hard to ignore. Mozart completed the serenade in a single burst, likely within a day. No drafts survive, no discarded sketches. It is as if the piece arrived whole, fully formed, bypassing the usual struggle between idea and execution. This pattern repeats across the manuscripts. The Jupiter Symphony, K551, finished on August 10, 1788, shows barely a correction from first note to last. The paper, sourced from a Viennese stationer, reveals a continuous flow, no change in ink color, no break in the script. Modern forensic studies have measured the pressure and speed of Mozart's pen strokes, finding that the opening motifs were written with a confidence bordering on recklessness. For most composers, a symphony of this complexity would mean weeks of sketches and revisions. For Mozart, the act of writing seems almost incidental to the act of composing. Compare this with Beethoven. His sketchbooks are layered with crossouts, marginalia, and entire pages of experimental fragments. The Eroica Symphony, for example, exists in draft after draft, whole movements torn apart and rebuilt. Beethoven's handwriting is restless, sometimes agitated, with ideas jostling for space. Each page is a battlefield, every note hard-won. Bach's fugues, too, reveal a different method: intricate drafts in pencil, themes tested in miniature before being expanded into full scores. The Well-Tempered Clavier is a patchwork of trial and error, the ink sometimes faded by erasures and rewrites. Both men left a trail of struggles. Mozart's process, by contrast, often leaves little trace of revision. Letters to his father describe entire operas composed mentally, then transcribed in a matter of days. Witnesses at Viennese salons recalled him improvising sonata movements on the spot, the music seemingly conjured from thin air. When he did make corrections, they were usually minor, an altered dynamic, a swapped ornament. The fair copies, destined for copyists and publishers, stand as monuments to his speed and clarity. Forensic analysis of the autographs has added a modern twist. Ink density tests on the Jupiter Symphony manuscript show rapid, uninterrupted writing for the opening allegro. In places where the ink pools or the line wavers, scholars find the rare moments when Mozart paused, perhaps to reconsider a harmony, perhaps just to dip his pen. These pauses are fleeting. Most of the time, the evidence points to a composer who wrote as quickly as he thought. But does speed mean perfection? Or does it mask something else, an impatience, a refusal to wrestle with the darker corners of the music? Beethoven and Bach embraced struggle, leaving behind a visible record of their doubts. Mozart's pages, by contrast, are almost eerily clean. The myth of effortless genius grows with every autograph, yet the question lingers: is the absence of struggle a sign of completeness, or a clue to something missing? The Requiem's unfinished pages would soon force that question into the open. In the summer of 1791, a stranger arrived at Mozart's door with a commission. No name, no details, just a promise of good payment for a Requiem Mass. The composer, already weakened by illness and pressed by debts, accepted. The contract was signed, and the first down payment delivered in cash. Behind the curtain stood Count Franz von Wolfgang, a minor noble with a taste for musical intrigue. Wolfgang had lost his young wife and wanted to pass off the Requiem as his own tribute, a secret Mozart would never learn. The work began in haste. Mozart's letters from September and October mention the Requiem alongside mounting worries, unpaid rent, pawned silver, and Constanze's desperate efforts to shield him from creditors. The apartment on Rauhensteingasse grew quieter as his health declined. Yet the music pressed forward, page after page in his unmistakable hand. The manuscript, now preserved in the Mozarteum's folios, shows the introitus and Kyrie complete, the sequence unfolding in black ink, until suddenly everything stops. On folio 83R, the lacrimosa breaks off mid-phrase. The handwriting falters, the line thins, and the last words trail into emptiness. Modern editors have measured the ink's fade, matching it to a period of fever and bed rest that left Mozart unable to work. The score resumes only in another's hand. Franz Xaver Suessmayr, his pupil and confidant, stepped in. Suessmayr had watched Mozart compose, heard him hum unfinished themes, and now faced the impossible, to finish a masterpiece that was not his own. Suessmayr's additions fill the gaps: Sanctus, Benedictus, Agnus Dei, guided by Mozart's sketches and spoken instructions. He wrote to publisher Hertel years later, insisting that he had finished the Requiem according to Mozart's instructions. Scholars have argued over every measure. Some find Suessmayr's orchestration lacking Mozart's density, others point to the AMN fugue sketch, discovered in 1963, as evidence that Mozart's plan was never fully realized. Meanwhile, Constanze fought to keep the household afloat. In October 1791, with bills piling up, she wrote to a friend that her husband's spirit would no longer work, and that they needed money. The urgency was real. The Requiem's unfinished pages became both a hope for payment and a record of a genius outpaced by mortality. What does it mean for perfection to remain unfinished? The Requiem's abrupt halt, the faded ink, the hand that tried to carry Mozart's voice forward, these are not just artifacts. They are the collision of genius and frailty, of ambition and fate. Does the music lose its claim to perfection, or does the very absence, those silent bars, say more than any note could? The answer, like the Requiem itself, remains unresolved. Perfection. The word follows Mozart, yet his music still provokes new questions. Today, his scores are studied more than any other composer's, and orchestras worldwide stage over 3,000 Mozart performances each year. As we search for the line between technical mastery and human depth, Mozart's legacy reminds us that true greatness is never finished. It only deepens.